The International Monetary Fund, an institution known for its calculated moves, has taken an unpredictable step that has left experts scratching their heads and nations reevaluating their financial strategies. But what exactly did the IMF do? Why is the world in disbelief? How does this unexpected move affect the balance of power in international finance? Join us on this thrilling journey to find out, and trust us, you won't want to miss a second of this financial roller coaster. For nearly 8 decades, the US dollar has ruled the international financial roost. But buckle up, because change is thundering in. You know, having the US dollar as the big boss came with a price tag. It tied nations to America's rules. But hold on to your hats, because China's rise to superpower status has thrown a curveball into this game. At first, everyone shrugged off the whispers of de-dollarization as mere talk. But guess what? The International Monetary Fund, aka the IMF, the supposed protector of the dollar's empire, has pulled a stunning stunt. And let me tell you, it's not your ordinary plot twist. Despite what you might think, the IMF isn't just a lapdog of the Western powers. It's got its own tricks up its sleeve. The US and China are like heavyweight boxers in the ring, but this time, the match isn't just about muscle. It's about the future of global finance. The US might be trying to divert attention by stirring up conflicts with China, but sharp minds see through the smoke and mirrors. They believe it's all a distraction from the real deal. The world is eyeing alternatives to the dollar, and China is stepping into the spotlight. Now, here's where it gets really spicy. The IMF, once seen as the dollar's faithful guardian, is having a change of heart. It's seriously considering China's yuan as the new cool kid on the financial block. Why? Well, the IMF had a secret mission all along, to keep the US dollar on its golden pedestal. But guess what? They're realizing that the dollar's reign might be nearing its end. And you know what this means? The dollar's supremacy is no longer a guarantee. Hold your breath, because the IMF is knee-deep in exploring if China's yuan could be the game changer. Why is this important? Because the IMF was like the financial superhero, created to maintain a smooth financial order worldwide. But surprise, surprise, it had some sneaky motives too. One of them, keeping the US dollar untouchable. To do this, the IMF wasn't afraid to play dirty, creating chaos in various countries to dethrone the dollar. Now rewind to 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference, where the IMF was born. On the surface, it looked like a noble organization aiming to help countries manage their complex financial matters and maintain stable exchange rates. But in reality, it was all about boosting the US dollar's dominance in the global money system. But wait, there's more. Countries that are part of the IMF pool in money, which is then used to help out those in financial need. Noble, you might think. But the IMF's job doesn't stop at just handing out cash. It keeps a hawk eye on economies and offers advice to its member nations, guiding them towards economic growth and financial stability. Plus, it plays a crucial role in promoting good economic policies, reducing poverty, and boosting international trade and cooperation. Now, here's a little tale to spice things up. Argentina, a country in economic turmoil, once received a loan from the IMF. And you won't believe what currency it was in, US dollars, of course. The IMF expected to be paid back in the same currency. Why? Because that's how it's been rolling for decades. But hold on to your hats, because now the IMF is considering China's yuan as a serious contender. If this happens, it could tip the scales of the global financial landscape. The world is changing, and the IMF is right in the middle of it, making decisions that could reshape the way nations handle their money matters. Brace yourselves for this bombshell. Argentina decided to use the Chinese yuan, also known as the renminbi or RMB, to pay off a chunk of its whopping $2.7 billion US dollar debt to the IMF. And get this, they coughed up a cool $1.1 billion US dollars in yuan. Now, why is this such a jaw-dropping twist? Well, the IMF spokesperson Julie Kozak had to publicly praise Argentina's savvy financial maneuvering. But deep down, you can bet this unexpected move sent shockwaves through the IMF and the US. I mean, who would have thought that a country in need of financial help would turn to China instead of the usual suspects? Here's the lowdown. The Chinese yuan is gradually climbing the ladder of global financial importance. It's becoming one of the go-to currencies for repaying debts to the IMF. That's right. Move over US dollar, there's a new player in town? But Argentina's choice wasn't random. Oh no, there's a method to this madness. China, being the good friend it is, promised Argentina financial support to help ease its ongoing financial crisis. Now, Argentina wasn't obligated to use the yuan for trade or debt settlements, but they saw something valuable in this alliance with China, something more valuable than dealing with the West and the IMF combined. And guess what? Argentina's gamble paid off. It sent shockwaves through the financial world, proving that there's a new game in town. The IMF had to swallow the bitter pill and accept that they'll now be receiving debt payments in yuan. You can almost hear the gears of the global financial system creaking as it adjusts to this unexpected twist. So alongside paying in Chinese yuan, Argentina took things up a notch. They sent an additional $1.7 billion using something called special drawing rights, or SDRs. This move not only increased the use of yuan, but also marked a groundbreaking moment. It was the very first time Argentina utilized the yuan acquired through trade with China to settle a substantial debt owed to a major international player like the IMF. This strategic play showcases Argentina's adaptability in the face of challenging circumstances. Originally, the plan was to use the yuan for imports, but repurposing it to pay off such a hefty debt illustrates Argentina's financial flexibility. Sergio Massa, a key figure in Argentina's economic ministry, spilled the beans on this payment process. He revealed that in June, payments were made without involving US dollars, relying solely on SDRs and yuan. Now, that's some resourceful financial management, don't you think? But here's the twist that has the US scratching its head. When China stands behind a country, that country means business. Argentina's decision to utilize the yuan, especially in the face of the IMF's acceptance of it as a valid form of payment, further underscores its utility as a medium of exchange in international financial transactions. Argentina, facing substantial challenges like a severe drought causing losses of over $20 billion, witnessed its peso plummeting by a staggering 44% against the almighty US dollar in just a year. And let's not forget the soaring inflation reaching a mind-boggling 70%. But this story isn't just about numbers. The ongoing negotiations with the IMF are intricately woven into Argentina's election campaign. Sergio Massa, wearing two hats as the Minister of Economy and a presidential candidate, finds himself at the heart of this storm. And in the midst of this economic turmoil, who emerges as a steadfast ally for Argentina? None other than China. China's commitment to Argentina's well-being shines brightly in the renewal of a bilateral currency swap agreement valued at a jaw-dropping 130 billion yuan. Converted to Argentine pesos, that's a whopping 4.5 trillion pesos, or about 18.2 billion US dollars. And guess what currency Argentina has chosen for these transactions? You got it, the Chinese yuan. Rumors are swirling that Argentina might once again turn to its currency swap agreement with China to settle a hefty 2.65 billion US dollar payment due this month. Now, this isn't your run-of-the-mill financial strategy, it's unique to say the least. But how does it work, and why is it such a clever move? You see, when Argentina pays in yuan, it doesn't need to keep a stash of US dollars in its central banks. Instead, it earns yuan by exporting goods to China. So, rather than converting those earned yuans, Argentina has opted to use them directly for debt payments. Brilliant, right? Not only does this help Argentina reduce its dependency on the US dollar, but it also assists China in establishing the yuan as the new international currency. And guess what? Brazil is eyeing this game-changing strategy too. Brazil and China have joined forces, striking a deal that allows them to engage in trade and investments using their own currencies, bypassing the need for the US dollar. Just like Argentina, Brazil will accept yuan for the goods it sells to China, not just for debt payments, but also for future trade. Now here's the exciting part. This creates a domino effect. With more and more countries adding yuan to their reserves and using it in international transactions, the argument that countries won't accept yuan and won't ditch the US dollar is losing its ground. The IMF's announcement that it will accept yuan for debt payments has paved the way for a significant shift.